Oral questions. Questions orales. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister attempted to lecture the opposition yesterday. It didn't go very well. Could the Prime Minister tell Canadians why it's acceptable to control personal assets in a family business when that same minister is legislating in the realm of pensions? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, in the House we have Canadians from all different backgrounds and experiences, and it's important to be able to discuss openly and freely things that matter to Canadians and the country. But we have an ethics commissioner who is there to ensure that the rules are followed, that the protocols are there to protect the integrity of our parliamentary institutions. And we here on this side of the House, we support and celebrate the work the Commissioner does. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Ethics Commissioner can only do her job if the government ministers actually provide her accurate information. And we know that didn't happen because the Finance Minister was fined for breaking the law. Now, yesterday he said that the problem is that other people just don't understand how it works. Right. Well, we know how it's supposed to work. Finance Ministers should not be able to have direct control over assets that they own while they regulate and legislate in those very areas that their companies operate in. So a very simple question for the Prime Minister. When was he made aware that the Finance Minister still owns shares in Morneau Shepell?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, the members of this House of Commons rely on the excellent work done by the Commissioner to ensure that all the rules are followed, that all the safeguards are in place to uphold the highest level of trust that Canadians have given to each of the 338 members who sit in this House. The personal and nasty attacks by the members opposite to try and lower Canadians' confidence in our institutions is quite frankly what they rejected after 10 years of that.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Order. Allow.
We rely on the Ethics Commissioner to do her job, and she relies on ministers of the Crown to be honest and open with what they hold in their hands. And that's something that this Finance Minister has failed to do. So again, to the Prime Minister, on what date was he made aware that the Finance Minister failed to disclose his corporation in France?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, we hear from these Conservatives thinly veiled attacks on the quality of work done by the Ethics Commissioner, which, quite frankly, is no surprise, because for 10 years, those members were part of a government that attacked the Elections Commissioner, that attacked Supreme Court justices, that attacked information commissioners, privacy commissioners, that attacked the Parliamentary Budget Officer, that attacked anyone who got in their way of ramming through their views of things. We respect Parliament.
Order. I'd ask a member for the Banff-Airdrie and others not to be talking or yelling when someone else has the floor. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the only people in this House right now that don't respect the work of the Ethics Commissioner are the ministers of the Crown and the Finance Minister, who failed to disclose, who hid his corporation in France, and who has now been fined for breaking the law. Now, he has failed to be open about his many assets. He has failed to answer simple questions about what he owns and why he structured it in the way he has. We're still going to ask some very simple questions. Can the Prime Minister tell us if the Ethics Commissioner has been informed of the Finance Minister's recusals from the 2 meetings that he claims that he recused himself from?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I've done a couple of times, but I think it's important to do, particularly today when so many young people are in this House today watching the workings of our Parliament, is to explain that it is perfectly normal and even important for the opposition to be asking difficult questions of a government. That's at the core of what we have as a government. But it's also, because of the nature of those attacks, important to have independent commissioners in which we can all have confidence to ensure that the rules are followed in the appropriate manner. That is what we is always doing. What is coming from the opposition is noise.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister insists that the Finance Minister was not in a conflict of interest, but we now know that's false. But the question still remains around Bill C-27, which could directly benefit the Finance Minister's family business. So, can the Prime Minister tell us whether the Finance Minister consulted the Ethics Commissioner before tabling Bill C-27 in the House, the Right Honourable Prime Minister? Mr. Speaker, as everyone in this Parliament knows, when you get elected, you work with the Ethics Commissioner to ensure that you're following the rules and principles. The Finance Minister offered to go above and beyond what the Ethics Commissioner advised because he knew how important it was, and we do too, to keep the confidence of voters. So we will continue to work with the Ethics Commissioner and with all commissioners here in Parliament to make sure that we respect and defend the institutions in this place. The Honourable Member for Rimouski, Nejet, Témiscouata, Basque.
Commissioner, but here's the thing. She can't plug those loopholes. The government could and choose to block efforts to do so. The Prime Minister might think otherwise, but Canadians' trust have been betrayed by the Finance Minister's ethical failings. Someone once said, and I quote, "The Prime Minister needs to show leadership and take responsibility for the actions of the people he appointed and hired." Who said that, you might ask? This very Prime Minister during the Duffy scandal. Clearly, the Prime Minister does not understand what a conflict of interest is. Does he also need help understanding leadership and responsibility?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this government has always chosen to look to raise the bar on openness and transparency, has continually worked and respected with the commissioners, whether it be the Ethics Commissioner, the Information Commissioner, the Privacy Commissioner. That's part of what Canadians asked us to do when they chose us as government 2 years ago, after 10 years of a government that had completely disrespected the institutions that protect our democracy. That is what we continue to focus on while we focus on the concerns and the issues that matter to Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski, Nejet, Témiscouata, Basque. I'd like to remind the Prime Minister that during the Senate expenses scandal in 2013, the current Prime Minister tweeted, quote, "Conservatives' lack of ethics equals Canadians' confidence in Parliament shaken. Time to hashtag raise the bar on accountability," end quote. After their own scandals around fundraising, the Prime Minister's vacation on the Aga Khan's private island, and the Finance Minister's involvement in C-27, does the Prime Minister still believe he has hashtag raised the bar on accountability? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Yes, Mr. Speaker. We continue to demonstrate our openness and transparency, and that's what Canadians asked us to do 2 years ago. We will continue to show an open, accountable government directly to Canadians, and like I do every Wednesday, I answer all the questions. I'm showing time and time again how well we understand that keeping the confidence of Canadians is essential in order for government to work well. The Honourable Member for Hochelaga. It's hard to believe, but barely 4 years ago, this Prime Minister was quick to criticize the Conservative government over ethical shortcomings like the Senate scandal. We all know the Liberals love using hashtag real change and raise the bar, but we're not so sure that they really mean it. Could the Prime Minister do the right thing and actually raise the bar on accountability? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to do so. In 2013, the Liberal Party was the one that showed openness and proactive disclosure. I admit it was a surprise. the Conservatives immediately supported it, but the NDP didn't want to climb on the proactive disclosure bandwagon, and now we understand their approach to ethics. The honourable member for Hochelaga.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister once said, and I quote, "Canadians ask for open and honest government. Instead, they have been saddled with secrecy, cynicism, and rampant ethical scandals." He was talking about the Duffy scandal, but I understand your confusion, Mr. Speaker. He could have said the exact same thing about his own government. So, when exactly does the Prime Minister think his sunny ways are going to come and clean up this government's secrecy, cynicism, and scandals?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we in the Liberal Party and in this government have always believed that sunshine is the best disinfectant. That's why we have moved forward on openness and transparency in ways that, yes, perhaps open us to a few more attacks from the members opposite, but ultimately create the confidence that Canadians must have in their democratic institutions.
Sir, order, order. I have to wonder if some folks had too much sugar last night. The Right Honourable Prime Minister has the floor. Order. Order.
We will continue to take very seriously the trust that Canadians placed in us by remaining open, transparent, and accountable to the opposition and to Canadians.
The honourable member for Richmond, Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, for 3 weeks now, the Prime Minister's been saying his finance minister was not in a conflict of interest. He said so even yesterday, all throughout question period. Now that the Ethics Commissioner has sanctioned him for these conflicts of interest, the conclusion is crystal clear. We know the Prime Minister was aware. So the question is simple. When did the Prime Minister know his minister had broken the law and was in a conflict of interest? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as I've often said, the Finance Minister worked with the Ethics Commissioner to make sure that everything was by the book. And he even went above and beyond what the Commissioner asked him to do initially. If the members opposite want to talk numbers, I have some numbers for them. 20,060 children in Richmond, Arthabaska received an average of $540 per family with the child benefit. That's what the Finance Minister's done. We're making a difference for them and for everyone. The honourable member for Richmond, Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, I look forward to the Prime Minister learning to answer simple questions. The Ethics Commissioner has confirmed that the Finance Minister broke the law and that he even paid the fine for it. This clearly shows the Prime Minister already knew about the Commissioner's decision yesterday. Try as the Prime Minister might to deny it all, the reality won't change at all. His minister broke the law. Is the Prime Minister telling Canadians his Finance Minister is above the law? Can he tell that to Canadians, Mr. Speaker? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Once again, Mr. Speaker, we understand that the opposition has to ask tough questions and even launch unfounded accusations to try to keep the government on its toes. That's understandable. That's our democratic system. But you also have to remember that we have commissioners like the Ethics and Conflict of Interest Commissioner to make sure that everyone's following the rules, that our institutions and rules are being followed, and that we go above simple partisanship, as the opposition is demonstrating, and that we can continue to show our confidence in the Commissioner, and Canadians can have confidence in us.
Mr. Speaker, ironically, I think this is the only time that the Prime Minister isn't trying to make something about himself. For 2 years, the Finance Minister led Canadians to believe that his assets were in a blind trust, and that was untrue. For 2 years, the Finance Minister has led the House to believe that he complied with the rules of the Ethics Commissioner, also untrue. The minister has been fined. The minister broke the law. Is this the higher standard that the Prime Minister says he's holding his ministers to? When will the Prime Minister tell us when he knew that the minister had broken the law?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite is right. This House shouldn't be about any individual one of us. It should be about the impact we have on on Canadians. And let me talk to you about Canadians. Let me talk to you about young people in Milton, Mr. Speaker. Let me talk to you about the 25,630 children in Milton who are receiving an average of $520 per family because of the Canada Child Benefit. This is money, Mr. Speaker, that we can give them because, unlike the Conservatives, we believe in helping those who need it.
Order. The honourable member for Milton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister indicated earlier that we're just throwing noise at him. Well, I speak on behalf of the parents of those 25,630 children, and they want to know exactly what is going on with the Finance Minister and his breaking the law. The Finance Minister's mandate letter from the Prime Minister said, I expect you to embody these values in your work and observe the highest ethical standards in everything you do. It's kind of like what we as parents teach our children, but here's the difference, Mr. Speaker. This Prime Minister, when did he know that the minister broke the law and he's not abiding by the rules?
Right, honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I know those parents in Milton, like those parents across the country, will be pleased to know that there is an ethics commissioner who takes seriously her job and ensures that the rules are followed as they are being followed by all of us in this House. But those parents also know that since the government changed, since we now have our government in place, they have been receiving larger benefit checks every month, tax-free, because the Conservatives chose to send those child benefit checks to millionaire families, and we send them to the people who actually need them. And the economic growth we've seen in this country.
The honourable member for Milton.
Carlton. We look alike.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is sending child care benefits to one millionaire himself. Earlier today, he said that sunshine is the greatest disinfectant. Yet, the Finance Minister's myriad of numbered companies are shrouded in darkness. We don't know what other conflicts he has hidden among the assets in those numbered companies. So will the Prime Minister agree to tell the Finance Minister to throw open the shutters and let in the sunshine so that we can see what's inside those companies?
Right, honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can see from the member opposite that they're not. They have actually had a difficult time with this concept for 10 years. This member opposite was part of the most secretive, opaque, untrusting and untrustworthy government that Canada has ever seen. The level of openness and transparency we have shown, the level of respect we have offered the Commissioners of Parliament, the Elections Canada Commissioner, Justices of the Supreme Court, that they never showed is part of why Canadians have trusted us to deliver the kind of growth that 10 years of Conservatives never could.
Order, please. Order. I'm sure the honourable member for Foothills has a fabulous voice, but I encourage you to sing perhaps at a different time. The honourable member for Carleton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has gone so far as to suggest that somehow it would be disrespectful to the Ethics Commissioner if the Finance Minister were to tell us what he's hiding in his numbered companies. Mr. Speaker, I wonder if the Prime Minister can tell us, did the Ethics Commissioner ban the Finance Minister from sharing with Canadians what assets he holds in those numbered companies?
Right, honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite wants to talk about numbers, and I know he's wondering just how many young people in Carleton have been receiving the Canada Child Benefit. Well, I can tell him it's been 16,200 kids in his riding that are receiving an average of $430 per family a month to help with the high costs of raising families, of buying new clothes, of back after school activities. These are the things that are making a difference for the families in his riding that we've increased because unlike their government, we don't help them.
Order. Alors, l'honorable.
The honourable member for Jonquière. The NDP and unions have sounded the alarm on Bill C-27, which gives priority to wealthy business cronies over the interests of workers and retirees. The risk associated with pensions will be shifted from employers onto workers. Today, my colleague will present a motion to withdraw the bill and do the right thing. The Prime Minister loves to say he's working for the middle class. So, is he going to work for our workers and retirees and scrap Bill C-27? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we're very proud of what we've accomplished for our workers and retirees. For workers, we've lowered taxes for the middle class and increased them for the wealthiest 1%. We're currently lowering taxes for small business so that they can hire more workers. And we're also working on behalf of retirees. We increased the guaranteed income supplement for the most vulnerable seniors by $1,000 a year. And we've boosted the Canada Pension Plan because we know that for the current generation, it's important to have reliable pensions. That's what we'll continue to do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Maybe you can answer this question since you didn't answer the others. Mr. Speaker, how can the Prime Minister say his government is working for the middle class when they have put forward a bill with the sole intent of shifting the risk of pension plans from the employer to the employee? Mr. Speaker, that's not working for the middle class. That's working for the wealthy and well-connected. And the fact that the Prime Minister is still considering going forward with this bill, which will have huge impacts on middle-class workers, proves that he is completely disconnected from the middle class. So, simple question. Will he do what's right and withdraw Bill C-27?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, just a week ago, we announced that we were going to be increasing the working income tax benefit by about $750 million in 2019. That's going to put more money in the pockets of hardworking Canadians and make a huge impact in the economic growth and the opportunities that hardworking Canadians have. We are always looking for ways to continue to help workers and their families and prepare them for their retirement. That is what we are going to continue to do because this government is focused on the middle class and those working hard to join it.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, I noticed that one of the talking points the Prime Minister is using today is that we believe in helping those who need it. So I'm just wondering if he could clarify that when he said that, if he meant helping the Finance Minister who holds stocks in a company that saw its share price increase after he introduced Bill C-27.
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the previous government delivered Canada Child benefits that went to every family across the country, including the wealthiest families. We didn't think that was fair, and we got a lot of grief from the Conservatives who disagree with us on that. But we think doing more for the families who need it and less for the families who don't is a way of growing the economy. And you know what, Mr. Speaker? It worked. Right. The Canada Child benefit, lowering taxes for the middle class and raising them on the wealthiest 1%, and now lowering small business taxes and increasing the WIPI work.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Well, that's why the GDP has shrunk and the deficit has increased, I'm sure. But nonetheless, the Prime Minister has said, sorry, other way around. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister also said that we rely on the excellent work of the Ethics Commissioner. But the reality is that the buck stops with him, with all of his cabinet ministers. Day after day, the Prime Minister has been standing up and saying that nothing has been done wrong. Yet today, the Ethics Commissioner said the Finance Minister broke the law. So why is the Prime Minister continuing to stand up and cover for his minister?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, day after day I stand up and defend the Ethics Commissioner and talk about the fact that everyone in this House works with her and respects the work and the advice that she gives. That is one of the foundations of the functionings of this place, that despite the back and forth we do have someone independent of partisanship who actually ensures that the rules are followed, and when mistakes are made, they are rectified. That is the role of the Ethics Commissioner, and that's exactly what I have been standing up time and time again and trying to explain to the members opposite.
The honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there you have it. Rather than raising the bar on the ethics of Liberal cabinet ministers as the Prime Minister mandated in his letters, the Finance Minister, with the Prime Minister's help, has lowered it. Right. The Ethics Commissioner has now confirmed that the Finance Minister broke the law and was fined. The Minister broke the law and the Prime Minister turns a blind eye to it. Yes. Mr. Speaker, since there's so many young people here today, I'd like to ask the Prime Minister one simple question. Is breaking the law now the new normal for the Prime Minister of Canada and his cabinet ministers?
The right honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased that the member for Barrie Innisfil brought up the young people in this place today. It's important for them to know that despite the back and forth that gets quite robust sometimes, particularly on Wednesdays, we do have a system that ensures that beyond partisanship, everyone in this place follows the rules, and if there are mistakes made, that there are consequences for it. We have a commissioner in place to defend the institutions of Parliament, the institutions of democracy. Unfortunately, for 10 years, the members opposite spent their time attacking those folks who were defending our democracy.
The honourable member for Barrie Innisfil. Order.
But the rules weren't followed, Mr. Speaker. They were broken.
Exactly.
Right. Broken. The Prime Minister's letter told the minister he had an obligation, and I quote, that it's not fully discharged by simply acting within the law, and he must live up to the highest standards of honesty and impartiality. But now we know the minister broke the law. Where I come from, Mr. Speaker, in Barrie Innisfil, you're either accountable or you justify. How can the Prime Minister keep making excuses for this Finance Minister?
The right honourable Prime Minister.
On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, I'm demonstrating that we respect and work with and follow the advice of the Ethics Commissioner. But I know the member from Barrie Innisfil wants to know how kids in his riding are doing. Mr. Speaker, 19,730 children in his riding are doing better because of the Canada Child Benefit. Excellent. That's an average monthly check to families of $540. Money that's being delivered to those families because the Conservatives gave them to everyone. We're giving them to those who need it the most.
That's excellent.
The honourable member for Salaberry-sur-Roy. Mr. Speaker, the head of Morneau Shepell stated at the end of 2015 that his company viewed the transfer of pension fund risk from employers to employees as a major business opportunity. Funny coincidence, the Minister of Finance tabled Bill C-27, a bill doing just that, only a few months later. If the Prime Minister likes the middle class as much as he says he does, why did he let his Minister of Finance table a bill that goes after workers' pensions to enrich his friends? Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I will happily speak about what we're doing for the middle class, for workers and for our pensioners. We brought down the age of retirement from 67 to 65 because the Conservative government had brought it up. We are delivering $1,000 per year more for our most vulnerable seniors, and we enhanced the Canada Pension Plan for the first time in generations because we know that investing in pensions and retirement for our workers is important.
Powell River.
Mr. Speaker, do you want to know why Morneau Shepell has been asking for legislation enabling target benefit pension plans for years? Because these plans are good for their clients and their employers, but not so good for the employees. Tabling a bill that places the burden of risk and accountability on pensioners is not working for the middle class, Mr. Speaker. It's working for corporate interests. Will the Prime Minister stop spewing talking points about the middle class and really help them by withdrawing C-27?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
From the beginning of this government's mandate, we have focused on helping the middle class in concrete ways, whether it was lowering taxes for the middle class, raising them on the wealthiest 1%, or delivering a Canada Child Benefit that helps families directly, including in North Island Powell River, Mr. Speaker, where 14,350 young people will be receiving larger checks, help every month with the high costs of raising their families. That's a $600 check on average to families every month, and it's making a real difference for the folks in your riding.